Evelyn starting today, take care of mom. I am Evelyn, 27 years old. That was the only explanation my brother gave as he hastily pushed our frail mother in her wheelchair onto the porch of my cramped apartment. Before I could process it, my sister-in-law leaned out the window of their luxury SUV. She flashed a mocking smile. She needs to be bathed and fed every day. Good luck. Then they sped off. They thought they had dumped their burden successfully. But just 1 month later, they would discover a truth that would completely shatter their arrogant lives. Before we dive into how this twisted family drama unfolded and the ultimate karma they faced, please take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more satisfying stories to light. Now, let's get back to the story. I stood frozen on the porch. My mother sat in the wheelchair, her head bowed, avoiding my gaze. When I was 18, she had told me to figure life out on my own so she could focus all her resources on her golden boy. She gave him the college tuition, the first car, and a house. I got nothing but the door slammed in my face. I looked down at her now. The commanding woman who once favored him over me was gone. In her place was a frail shadow suffering from a stroke, discarded by the very son she sacrificed everything for. I swallowed the bitter lump of resentment in my throat. I grabbed the handles of her wheelchair and gently pushed her inside. The door clicked shut, leaving me and the woman I once called Mom in a suffocatingly awkward silence. The space inside my apartment suddenly felt restricted. The first few days turned into a relentless battle of willpower. Mom actively rejected her new reality. She refused to acknowledge her surroundings or speak to me. When I brought her meals, she firmly pushed the tray away. The soup spilled, staining my carpet. She demanded to return to Bradley's house immediately. She insisted he had made a mistake, claiming he would turn his car around any second to pick her up. I simply cleaned up the spilled food without a word. I returned to the kitchen, cooked another bowl, and returned. I sat beside her wheelchair, holding the spoon near her mouth, until she finally surrendered to her hunger. The physical toll of caring for her hit me instantly. Her stroke had left her left side completely paralyzed. I had to manually lift her out of the wheelchair, maneuver her onto the bed, and help her use the bathroom. I constantly repositioned her body during the night to prevent bed sores. Through all of this, she glared at me with palpable resentment. She hated relying on the daughter she had previously thrown out. I absorbed her frustration and maintained strict silence. Her only remaining lifeline was her phone. Every afternoon, she demanded I place it onto her lap. Her trembling right hand would slowly dial Bradley's number. She always insisted on putting the call on speakerphone. The mechanical ringing tone echoed through my small living room. It always ended with the exact same automated message telling her to leave a voicemail. She would hit the end button, take a shallow breath, and try again. 5, sometimes 10 times in a row. She left desperate voicemails. Her voice cracked as she begged him to pick up for just 1 minute. I stood by the kitchen sink, washing the same mug repeatedly, listening to her breakdown. Bradley never answered. He never returned a single call. The absolute silence from his end was deafening. By Wednesday, her anxiety reached a breaking point. She forced me to text Cynthia. She dictated an emotional message pleading for an update on their business trip. Hours ticked by. I left the phone on the counter and continued my design work. Finally, the screen lit up. I opened the message and read it aloud to her. Cynthia had typed a cold, brief reply. "We are extremely busy with this business trip. Lots of meetings. We will drop by this weekend." That single sentence flipped a switch in Mom's demeanor. Her sunken eyes lit up with sheer relief. She smiled for the first time since Bradley dropped her off. She spent the rest of the week talking nonstop about the upcoming weekend. She ordered me to wash and iron her best silk blouse so she would look perfectly presentable. Saturday morning arrived. Mom woke up before dawn. She insisted I help her dress immediately. I maneuvered her into the ironed blouse and positioned her wheelchair facing the window. She watched the street below with intense anticipation. Every time a car drove past, she leaned forward, gripping the armrests tightly. I prepared lunch, but she refused to eat, claiming she wanted to wait for Bradley. The afternoon sun faded into dusk. The streetlights flickered on outside, No SUV pulled up to the curb. No one knocked on my door. I checked my phone repeatedly. 0 missed calls. 0 text messages. Sunday followed the exact same agonizing pattern. She sat by the window from sunrise to sunset. The weekend completely slipped away. The reality of their absence filled the room heavy and undeniable, yet the delusion held strong. On Monday morning, as I fed her a bowl of oatmeal, she broke the silence. She stared blankly at the wall, making elaborate excuses. She declared that Bradley must have been held up by an emergency meeting. She reasoned that his career was demanding, stating that successful men carry heavy burdens. She convinced herself he was sacrificing his time to secure the family's future. I did not argue. I did not point out the obvious lies or the fact that they never called. I just wiped her mouth with a napkin, took the bowl, and walked back to the kitchen. The denial served as her only shield against a truth too painful to confront. 2 weeks passed with the slow rhythm of rehabilitation sessions until an unusual event occurred on Saturday morning. I had just finished helping Mom settle into her bed for a mid-morning nap. I walked back into the kitchen to prepare her medication. Suddenly, my phone vibrated aggressively against the countertop. The caller ID flashed the name of my best friend Marcus. I swiped to answer, pinning the phone between my ear and shoulder while sorting the pills. Before I could even say hello, his voice blasted through the speaker. He sounded out of breath, speaking in a harsh, urgent whisper. He demanded to know exactly where my brother and sister-in-law were supposed to be. I told him they were on a crucial business trip across the country. Marcus cursed under his breath. He instructed me to drop whatever I was doing and open the text messages he just sent. He explained he was currently parked across the street from my mother's sprawling estate in the Lake Oswego neighborhood. He had spotted something entirely wrong and started documenting the scene. I grabbed the phone and opened our message thread. 4 high-resolution photos downloaded onto my screen. I tapped the first image, and my stomach plummeted. There stood Bradley. He was not wearing a tailored business suit. He was not sitting in a corporate boardroom. He wore a faded college t-shirt and athletic shorts, casually pushing a lawnmower across the pristine front lawn of Mom's property. He looked incredibly relaxed, whistling while doing yard work. I swiped violently to the second picture. Cynthia was lounging comfortably on the massive front porch. She wore designer sunglasses, sipping from a steaming ceramic coffee mug while lazily flipping through a fashion magazine. They had never left the state. They were treating my mother's multi-million-dollar property like their own private weekend retreat. The audacity of their lie burned through my veins. However, the betrayal quickly morphed into pure alarm when I viewed the third and fourth pictures. A massive commercial moving truck idled right in the middle of the circular driveway. 2 men in matching uniforms were actively hauling heavy boxes and large pieces of furniture through the wide-open front doors. I zoomed in on the items. A sleek modern leather sectional sofa, a contemporary glass dining table, an enormous flat-screen television. None of those items belonged to my mother. Her entire house was strictly decorated with classic antiques and heavy mahogany wood. I put the phone back to my ear and demanded Marcus tell me exactly what he saw. He confirmed my worst fear. The workers were systematically unloading Bradley and Cynthia's personal belongings from the truck and bringing them directly into the estate. They were not just stopping by to check on the property, they were actively moving in. My mind raced at dangerous speeds, desperately trying to piece together the fragmented clues. They dumped a paralyzed woman at my cramped apartment. They fabricated an elaborate story about a month-long work commitment. They ruthlessly ignored her desperate phone calls, letting her cry out for them while they simply silenced their devices. All of that calculated cruelty served one specific purpose: to get her out of the house. But the puzzle still lacked a crucial piece. They already owned a massive, expensive house on the other side of the city. Relocating their entire lives into Mom's vacant mansion made absolutely no sense unless they harbored a much darker, financially driven agenda. They were taking complete possession of her territory. I ended the call with Marcus, my hands trembling with raw anger. I walked slowly toward the hallway and stopped just outside the bedroom door. I peeked through the crack. Mom lay quietly on her back, staring at the ceiling, likely still twisting logic to defend her golden child's absence. If I burst into that room and showed her these photos right now, the sheer shock would utterly destroy her. It could trigger another stroke. I needed the full picture. I needed concrete, undeniable evidence of their ultimate goal before dropping this explosive truth on her fragile heart. I locked my phone screen, slipped the device deep into my pocket, and swallowed the rage burning in my throat. I chose silence. I would investigate this conspiracy myself. That night, after finishing the chores, I decided I could no longer hide this cruel truth. I wiped down the cold kitchen counter, dried my hands on a towel, and walked slowly down the narrow hallway. I pushed open the bedroom door. Mom lay propped up against the pillows, staring blankly at the muted television screen. I sat down on the edge of her mattress. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my smartphone, and unlocked the screen. I opened the message thread from Marcus and placed the glowing device directly into her trembling hands. I offered no introduction. I provided no warning. She adjusted her reading glasses with her functional hand and looked down. She squinted at the first image of Bradley mowing the lawn. Her brow furrowed in deep confusion. Then her thumb swiped across the screen. She saw Cynthia lounging on the porch. She swiped again, landing on the photograph of the massive moving truck occupying her driveway. The reaction struck her like a physical blow. The color instantly drained from her face, leaving her skin pale and drawn. Her breathing turned shallow and erratic. She dropped the phone onto the heavy wool blanket as if the device itself had physically burned her fingers. The impenetrable wall of denial completely collapsed. The fabricated cross-country business trip, the ruthlessly ignored voicemails, the sudden and unceremonious drop-off at my cramped apartment, every disjointed puzzle piece violently snapped together. She finally comprehended the sheer magnitude of their betrayal. They had not relocated her out of necessity. They had systematically exiled her to hijack her multi-million-dollar estate. The golden pedestal she had built for her son shattered into a million jagged pieces. A deep, guttural sob ripped forcefully through her chest. She covered her face with her functional hand, weeping with a raw, agonizing intensity that filled the small room. Her frail shoulders shook violently. I sat silently, anchoring her through the emotional storm. She reached out and desperately grabbed my wrist. Her grip felt surprisingly strong, fueled by overwhelming guilt and sheer panic. She looked up at me, her eyes bloodshot and brimming with tears. She abandoned every ounce of her remaining pride. Everything Bradley has today. She choked out, her voice trembling violently. Everything he owns is because of me. She gasped for air, forcing the painful words out of her throat. I funded his entire existence. I sacrificed my whole life for him. I took your share. I took exactly what rightfully belonged to you, and I handed it straight to him. I financed his businesses. I paid for his lifestyle. I gave him everything, and he threw me away like garbage. The raw confession hung heavily in the suffocating air. Hearing her finally acknowledge the injustice that defined my entire youth sent a shockwave through my system. I swallowed hard, clenching my jaw, and strictly refusing to let my own tears fall. This moment required absolute clarity, not emotional breakdowns. Mom suddenly released my wrist and aggressively gestured toward her overnight travel bag resting in the corner of the room. She commanded me to bring it to her. I hauled the heavy leather travel bag onto the mattress and quickly unzipped the main compartment. She frantically dug her hand deep into the hidden side pocket and pulled out a small, worn velvet pouch. She pressed the pouch firmly into my palm. The heavy metal keys clinked sharply against each other. "Take these," she ordered, her tone shifting from profound despair to frantic urgency. "These keys open my primary safe deposit box at the downtown bank. There is a black leather notebook inside. It contains every single password, every routing number, and every account detail I possess." She gripped my hands tightly, her fingernails digging into my skin. She begged me to log into the online portals immediately. She needed to expose the absolute truth. She feared he had already breached her emergency funds. She instructed me to meticulously trace every single wire transfer, scrutinize every withdrawal, and review every cleared check from the past decade. The shift in our dynamic felt absolute. The mother who had forcefully banished me into the world at 18 now surrendered her entire financial survival directly into my hands. I closed my fingers around the velvet pouch, stood up from the bed, and walked straight toward my laptop. The following Monday morning, I directly brought Mom to the office of Mr. Harrison, our longtime family lawyer. I pushed her wheelchair straight into his private conference room. We placed the stack of bank statements, investment logs, and wire transfer receipts onto his polished oak desk. Mr. Harrison adjusted his glasses. He spent an hour scrutinizing every recorded transaction. He punched numbers into his calculator, his jaw clenching. Finally, he exhaled sharply, looked up, and turned the device toward us. The final sum flashed in bold digits: $450,000. Bradley had methodically drained that exact amount from her primary accounts over the past decade. He funneled her money to fund failing business ventures, cover personal debts, and purchase his luxury house. He treated her life savings like a personal ATM, extracting cash while offering nothing in return. Mom gripped the armrests of her wheelchair. Her knuckles turned stark white as the reality of his ruthless financial exploitation fully registered. Mr. Harrison wasted no time. He initiated a strict legal protocol to build a defense against my brother. First, he needed to definitively prove her mental competency. He brought in a medical examiner to conduct a cognitive evaluation. The examiner asked complex questions regarding her assets, lineage, and the current date. Mom answered every single question with absolute clarity and fierce precision. Her body remained weakened by the stroke, but her mind operated flawlessly. The examiner signed the official affidavit of competency. This crucial document guaranteed that Bradley and Cynthia could never challenge her legal decisions in court by falsely claiming I manipulated a sick woman. Her mental fitness was officially certified on paper. Next, Mr. Harrison drafted the revocation of power of attorney. Years ago, Mom had blindly trusted Bradley and granted him comprehensive legal authority to manage her affairs. That paper gave him absolute power to sign contracts, access funds, and make medical decisions. Mr. Harrison slid the new revocation document across the desk. He handed Mom a heavy metal pen. She did not hesitate for a second. Her right hand trembled slightly, but she pressed the ink firmly onto the signature line. In one single stroke, she stripped Bradley of all his control. He no longer possessed the legal right to speak for her, touch her bank accounts, or manage her life. His free pass vanished completely, severing his access to her wealth. With her financial autonomy restored, Mr. Harrison moved to secure her most valuable asset, the Lake Oswego estate. He immediately prepared an official notice and filed it directly with the county recorder and the local title company. He placed a rigid, unbreachable legal block on the property deed. He explicitly instructed them that absolutely no transfer, sale, deed modification, or mortgage application could proceed under any circumstances without Mom's direct verified signature. If Bradley attempted to secretly sell the mansion, transfer the ownership, or leverage the property for a quick cash loan, the financial system would instantly reject the fraudulent transaction. The estate was successfully locked down from the outside. Bradley was trapped inside a property he could never legally own, sell, or exploit. Finally, Mr. Harrison prepared the offensive arsenal for our upcoming civil confrontation. He typed up a formal notice of trespass. This specific document officially revoked any implied permission Bradley previously held to occupy the estate. It legally categorized him as an illegal squatter, granting us the absolute power to dispatch law enforcement to remove him if he refused to vacate voluntarily. Then, Mr. Harrison drafted the most devastating document of all, the demand letter. He attached the mountain of banking evidence, including every wire transfer receipt and cleared check, to the back of the notice. The letter explicitly demanded the immediate repayment of the $450,000. Mr. Harrison structured the legal threat perfectly. He outlined that failure to surrender the stolen funds would result in an aggressive civil lawsuit, a court-ordered judgment, and a direct lien against Bradley's personal assets. Mr. Harrison printed the final pages and neatly arranged the thick stack of legal documents inside a pristine manila folder. He closed the folder and handed it directly to me. The legal shield was fully armed and ready to deploy. Exactly 1 month after the day they abandoned my mother on my doorstep, Bradley's sports car pulled up into the apartment yard. The heavy roar of his high-end engine echoed through the quiet residential street, before cutting out abruptly. I stood near the kitchen window watching through the blinds. Bradley stepped out of the driver's side wearing an expensive jacket. Cynthia joined him from the passenger side, clutching a giant basket of imported fruits and a bouquet of fresh flowers. They exchanged a quick, calculating glance, straightened their clothes, and walked up the concrete stairs toward my front door. Their expressions wore carefully practiced smiles. They were ready to perform a masterpiece of fake concern and family devotion. The doorbell rang twice. I walked over and swung the wooden door open without saying a word. Bradley immediately flashed an overly bright, enthusiastic smile and stepped right past me into the narrow foyer. Cynthia followed close behind, placing the fruit basket on my small dining table with an exaggerated sigh of relief. Bradley extended his arms loudly, declaring how exhausting their long business trip across the country had been. He claimed they came straight from the airport the second their flight landed. They pretended to worry, asking if we were managing all right in such cramped quarters. I folded my arms, leaned my back against the living room wall, and maintained absolute silence. I watched them perform their rehearsed routine, letting them dig their own legal grave deeper with every word. Mom sat motionless in her wheelchair in the corner of the room. She wore a plain gray sweater, her hands resting quietly in her lap. She did not smile, nor did she greet them. She simply stared at Bradley with a cold, unblinking gaze. Unaware of her internal transformation, Bradley mistook her silence for her usual passive submission. He dragged a wooden dining chair over, positioned it right beside her wheelchair, and sat down. He took her hand between both of his, lowering his voice to a soft, sugary tone. He whispered that he missed her every single day while away. Cynthia stepped up behind his chair, nodding along with tears brimming in her eyes, pretending to share his deep emotional strain. Then Bradley smoothly transitioned into his primary agenda. He sighed heavily, looking down at her paralyzed arm with a manufactured look of heartbreak. He claimed that after consulting top medical specialists during his trip, he realized my small apartment lacked the specialized equipment required for her recovery. He announced that he had located an elite luxury senior living community on the outskirts of the city. He described the facility as a 5-star resort, featuring 24-hour nursing care, private gardens, and physical therapy centers. Cynthia chipped in, claiming it was the absolute best environment for a woman of her status to spend her golden years. Before Mom could even react, Bradley reached inside his leather briefcase and pulled out a thick document clipped inside a blue folder. He laid the papers directly onto her lap along with a sleek black pen. He patted her shoulder gently, coaxing her to sign the pages immediately. He explained that in order to secure her private suite at this exclusive facility, he needed to liquidate her Lake Oswego estate. He told her the document granted him full power of attorney to list the mansion on the market, handle the buyer negotiations, and transfer the proceeds directly into an account dedicated to her care. He claimed time was running out and urged her to sign on the marked lines before the suite went to another applicant. They leaned in close, hovering over her like vultures waiting for a signature. They firmly believed she remained the same naive, doting mother who would blindly surrender her entire fortune to protect her golden boy. They had no idea that her trust had already shattered weeks ago. They did not know her mind was razor sharp, or that every legal bridge connecting Bradley to her wealth had been burned to the ground. I stayed motionless against the wall, quietly tracking the clock on my phone. They had walked directly into our trap, completely unaware of what was about to hit them. Right as Bradley pushed the stack of papers and the pen toward my mother, 3 steady knocks echoed from the front door. I pushed myself off the wall, walked across the small living room, and twisted the deadbolt. Mr. Harrison stepped confidently inside the apartment, clutching the pristine manila folder against his chest. The manufactured sympathetic smile on Bradley's face instantly evaporated. He aggressively pushed his wooden chair back, the legs scraping harshly against the floor. He stood up, puffing out his chest, and demanded to know why a lawyer was intruding on a private family medical conversation. Mr. Harrison did not acknowledge him. He did not offer a handshake or a greeting. He walked straight past Bradley and stood directly beside Mom's wheelchair, acting as her absolute legal shield. He opened the manila folder and systematically laid the official documents out on the dining table, completely covering Bradley's fraudulent nursing home contracts. Mr. Harrison adjusted his glasses and looked directly into Bradley's wide, panicked eyes. He announced in a booming, authoritative voice that Shirley had officially executed a completely new estate plan. He declared that every single previous authorization, including the comprehensive power of attorney Bradley previously held, was legally revoked, destroyed, and permanently voided. Cynthia immediately broke character. She lunged forward, her voice pitching into a hysterical, piercing scream. She aggressively pointed her finger at me. She accused me of isolating a sick, vulnerable woman and maliciously manipulating her into signing away her rights. She threatened to call Adult Protective Services and the police. Mr. Harrison calmly reached into his folder and presented the certified medical affidavit of competency. He silenced Cynthia instantly. He stated clearly that top independent medical professionals had thoroughly evaluated Shirley and legally certified her mental fitness. He aggressively warned Cynthia that any attempt to challenge Mom's cognitive state in a courtroom would fail miserably and immediately result in severe countersuits for defamation and harassment. Bradley stared at the medical affidavit, his hands visibly shaking. He realized his primary weapon of manipulation was completely gone, but the legal assault had just begun. Mr. Harrison pulled out the first major offensive document. He slapped the notice of trespass onto the table. He explicitly informed Bradley and Cynthia that they no longer possessed any legal right, implied permission, or familial privilege to occupy the Lake Oswego estate. He legally categorized them as hostile, illegal squatters. He delivered a brutal, uncompromising ultimatum. He gave them exactly 24 hours to pack their personal belongings and permanently vacate the mansion. If they remained on the property 1 second past that deadline, Mr. Harrison promised to dispatch local law enforcement to physically remove them in handcuffs. The color completely drained from Bradley's face. His breathing turned shallow and erratic. His knees visibly buckled as the reality of losing his stolen mansion settled in. But Mr. Harrison prepared to deliver the absolute fatal blow. He reached into the folder one last time and extracted the thick demand letter, heavily backed by pages of wire transfer receipts, bank statements, and cleared checks. He shoved the massive stack directly against Bradley's chest. The papers hit the floor, scattering wildly around his expensive leather shoes. Mr. Harrison demanded the immediate full repayment of the $450,000 Bradley had systematically drained from Mom's accounts over the past decade. Bradley stumbled backward, hitting his shoulders against the wall. He stammered uncontrollably, desperately claiming those funds were voluntary gifts, not loans. Mr. Harrison ruthlessly shut down his pathetic defense. He explained the strict legal reality of their situation. He stated that if the stolen funds were not surrendered immediately, his law firm would file a massive civil lawsuit by the end of the week. He promised to ruthlessly pursue a court judgment. Once the judge ruled in our favor, Mr. Harrison vowed to place a direct, unbreakable lien on all of Bradley's personal assets. He explicitly stated they would freeze his bank accounts, seize his business assets, and force the liquidation of his current private residence to satisfy the massive debt. The room plunged into a suffocating, absolute silence. Cynthia collapsed heavily into the dining chair, clutching her chest, gasping for air as sheer, unadulterated panic consumed her. Bradley stood completely paralyzed, his eyes darting frantically around the room, searching for an exit that did not exist. The arrogant, untouchable golden boy finally realized the devastating truth. They walked into this apartment expecting to steal a multi-million-dollar estate, but they were leaving with absolutely nothing except a catastrophic mountain of debt. 6 months after that fateful day, everything had completely changed in an order no one could have ever anticipated. The legal machine moved swiftly and without a single ounce of mercy. Since Mr. Harrison permanently locked down the Lake Oswego estate, Bradley completely lost his primary financial lifeline. He could not legally sell the property to generate quick cash. The civil court ruled heavily in our favor, legally validating the massive debt. The judge slammed his gavel and stamped a massive lien across all of Bradley's personal assets to satisfy the $450,000 he systematically stole. The financial consequences hit him like an unstoppable freight train. The banks instantly froze his personal checking accounts and seized his investment portfolios. Without Mom's stolen wealth acting as his personal safety net, his failing business ventures collapsed entirely. His desperate attempts to hire cheap defense lawyers failed miserably against Mr. Harrison's airtight evidence. Other commercial creditors smelled blood in the water. They aggressively swarmed him, demanding immediate payments on his outstanding business loans. Repo men showed up at his doorstep in the middle of the night, forcefully towing away his luxury sports car and Cynthia's expensive SUV. The bank officially foreclosed on his massive luxury house, forcefully evicting him from the lavish lifestyle he had funded with stolen money. He officially filed for bankruptcy, standing on the sidewalk and watching his heavily manufactured empire burn to ash. Cynthia did not stay to weather the financial storm. The exact moment the court seized their vehicles and the bank took their house. Her fake loyalty evaporated entirely. She absolutely refused to live a life of poverty and struggle alongside a broke husband. She packed her expensive designer bags, marched straight to a ruthless divorce attorney, and abruptly filed the paperwork. She fiercely fought for the remaining scraps of their depleted assets in family court, completely abandoning him in his darkest hour. Bradley lost everything simultaneously. He lost his marriage, his stolen wealth, and his pristine social reputation. He currently rents a cramped, rundown studio apartment on the far edge of the city. The place perfectly resembles the exact type of cramped environment where he ruthlessly dumped his paralyzed mother. He works a grueling minimum wage job just to afford basic groceries. He tried calling me dozens of times, leaving pathetic voicemails begging for a second chance and emergency financial bailouts. I never answered a single call. I cut him off permanently. Meanwhile, Mom and I hired a moving truck and relocated back into her Lake Oswego mansion. The atmosphere inside the house completely shifted. We cleared out all of Bradley's remaining junk and aggressively reclaimed the space. I transformed the large guest room on the main floor into my new graphic design studio. Mom threw herself into her physical therapy sessions with fierce, unrelenting determination. She steadily regained mobility in her left side, eventually trading her heavy wheelchair for a simple silver cane. We established a new daily routine built on mutual respect instead of blind obligation. We spend our evenings sitting quietly on the back patio drinking herbal tea and talking honestly about the past. She formally apologized for stripping away my youth and blindly favoring a manipulative son. She admitted her massive mistakes without making any excuses. I listened to her raw apologies and actively chose to forgive her. We stopped looking backward and started building a real connection. The deep childhood wounds finally scarred over, replaced by a genuine, undeniable bond. For the first time in 27 years, we function as a real, supportive family. Blood does not automatically guarantee loyalty. Blind favoritism only breeds extreme entitlement and catastrophic greed. True family members are the ones who stand by your side when the money runs out, the health fades, and the storms hit. Bradley chose pure greed over his own mother, and the universe handed him the exact lonely life he ultimately deserved. Thank you for watching this story to the very end. Do you think Bradley deserved his harsh financial punishment, or should Evelyn have given him a second chance? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. We absolutely love reading your perspectives and discussing these intense family dynamics with our amazing community. Please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share your opinions with us.